Good morning. Fiddling around already. Look, last week I did something on the scales, and I just want to keep going through all the functions that we have on the Thermomix, because I know I go through them all with you at delivery, but there's so much information that it's just really good, I think, to reinforce what all the functions do. I've actually had a couple of examples just in the last week where I've done a couple of demos and people have said, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. And I'm sure I've said it, because I always do say it, but it just goes in one ear and out the other, because, you know, understand that there's so much that needs to be shared at a delivery. So today is about the kneading function. I've just got to make sure that I've got some notes on my phone to make sure I tell you everything. So let's go into the kneading function here. So on our TM6, we just slide the second one from the top on mine, and here it is. Now, like all the other functions, there is a little eye up here that tells you about it. Use it for yeast doughs with a recommended maximum weight of 1.3 kilos. It only works when the bowl temperature is below 60, which it is what it should normally be, because if you're activating yeast, it's normally at 37 degrees. You don't want that to be too hot, otherwise you're going to kill the yeast. Use the spatula to help if necessary. Remembering that you only use the one that comes with the Thermomix, because of the collar, it's not going to reach the blades. And use the measuring tape just to stop things from splashing out. Okay. So as you can see, basically, if I'm using the kneading function, I use it in guided cooking. But if you wanted to knead something, it's usually 2 minutes. You would turn this up to 2. Then you hit the little wheat sheet. You would need your lid on, otherwise there's going to be an error. And all you then do is turn. So lock the lid in place and off it goes. Now, just a little bit more on this. I've actually got my notes. So just so you know, what happens when it's kneading. So when you mix flour and water together, gluten is created. But to actually get it so it makes a really nice strong dough, bread needs to be kneaded. You know how when you do it by hand, you sort of push and you stop and you push and you stop. It's exactly what's happening in there. So the blades go in one direction, then they go back in the other direction. Well, sorry, they go in one direction, they stop, and then they actually go in the other direction and they stop, which is really mimicking what you do by hand. The magic is, though, that 2 minutes of kneading in here is equivalent of 10 minutes of kneading by hand. And, you know, I'm sure there are bakers who've got really good forearms from all that kneading, but I'll tell you what, if it can do it for 2 minutes in here. Now, I was going to say whilst I'm doing something else. However, when you are kneading in your Thermomix, it is actually important that you stay reasonably close, because depending on how much dough you've got in there, it can just move around a little bit. So you don't want it walking off the bench. It's not going to really walk, but it's just a good time to actually stay with the Thermomix. And there's not many times when you need to do that. What was I doing yesterday? I went out somewhere and I just left mine washing, you know, so it was clean when I got back. That was great. But this is a time when it is good to stay close by. Now, what else do I need? Okay, what else do I need to tell you about kneading? It doesn't need any other attachment. It's just the blades. There's no butterfly. Butterfly is only for really light things. It's not for something, you know, heavy, like a heavy dough. I have had someone who used one and totally stuffed up their butterfly very quickly by using it for kneading. So it is just the blades. It needs nothing else on there. I know some processors need something else. All right. What else have I got to tell you? Oh, just this really, just a little tip on getting the dough out. So when you've done your kneading, tip the bowl upside down to get your dough onto the bench or the mat or whatever it is. And what you do is, if you look at the bottom here, I've got a little red dot because these go to cooking classes. This is actually the bottom of your blade. It's a bit hard to show, but this thing here, you see how it's rotating? That's the bottom of your blades. So if you wiggle like that on the bottom of your blades, it means that your blades are moving on the inside, and that's going to help loosen off the dough. So that makes it easier to get out. The other thing you can do, if you've got a little bit of dough left around the blades, is a quick turbo or a high speed. That'll centrifugal force will push it off. And it will get all the dough off for you. If you find it's there on the inside of your bowl, just grab a bit of your dough and just pat around like that. That will pick up that dough that's sitting around the outside of your bowl. So I think that's everything about kneading. Obviously, there's a whole lot on bread making. If you go back through my YouTube channel, I know we've done a couple of bread making classes, and Irene and Boone are great bread makers, and they put lots of tips in there. But that's just basically to talk you through the kneading function. And usually, if you're making bread, it'll just come up in the recipe. Okay, have a lovely day.